name's Dawn and I work at a special school in Hertfordshire. Our young people have severe and profound and multiple learning difficulties, and some have learning difficulties. We also provide support for mainstream schools for their SEN children. So today I thought we'd talk about early communication and relationships and behaviour and how those thread together for our young people. I also thought that now we're in lockdown 3, that I'd talk about how that works during lockdown and with these virtual meetings that we're having. Sometimes we call them lessons. Early communication and children with severe learning difficulties or profound and multiple learning difficulties or learning difficulties. Our young people find it hard to interact virtually. Some of them find it much, much easier because there's not the pressure of being there in person. But in general, it's much harder to interact with people virtually. So the idea of changing our expectations, not reducing them, but changing our expectations for what interaction and communication look like is really, really important. Also, building those relationships with parents has never been more important, because parents are facilitating these interactions with our young people in a way that they never had to before. It means that our relationships with our young people are stronger, and it means that our relationships with parents are stronger. We know that young people struggle with their behaviour sometimes more for parents. We know that parents talk of the Coke bottle effect that school can have. They go home and it's all too much. They've struggled all day to maintain some kind of equilibrium, and when they get home they just explode. How is that different for young people during lockdown if they're not attending school? We know that we have lots of people who are attending school. This lockdown is different from the first one. And what does that mean for those who are having to stay at home versus those who are coming into school? So early communication is something that the government would say is really important and underpins all those 7 areas of learning that are in the EYFS. The back and forth interactions from an early age form the foundations for language and cognitive development, they say, in the early years development criteria, in development matters. And they talk about regular good quality interaction opportunities that will help children learn about communication and how it works and how they develop their skills. If we don't concentrate on the verbal part of that and we concentrate on the back and forth part of that, I think we're going to have some way of getting in with our young people, even on virtual platforms. I've had many Zoom lessons with young people from school, all different abilities, including my own. And some of those young people with the most profound and multiple learning difficulties are still finding it that they can make a connection through the computer screen or the iPad screen, whichever screen it is. Sometimes for me, it's hard to see what their interactions might look like because the camera angle might be slightly wrong, or the parents might continue to talk, even though I really, really would like them to just wait just for a minute. But in general, I've found that I can continue those interactions even virtually. It's been really interesting. I did a lesson with someone the other day, and the lesson in its whole, that the teacher was doing art, and they were potato printing, and the young person needed a lot of support, lots and lots of hand under hand support to enable them to explore the paint and to explore the potato and to see if they did anything with it. And gently explaining to mum that just waiting was probably better than trying to get the painting finished, would see more results. And supporting mum through that process of waiting and watching was really, really important. And I think it's one of the biggest things that we've got to do right now is to build those relationships with parents so that they can support the young people and facilitate those things that are happening. The lesson was about painting and potato printing. But for me, it was more about just building a connection. And doing that virtually with a young person with more profound difficulties, it could feel like we weren't able to do anything. But I watched and I waited, and I asked Mum to watch and wait. And eventually she saw the nuances of communication that he was giving. And she was really impressed with him because he was interacting with the screen in very small ways for her, but he was, for me, they were huge. He was interacting. His eyes would glance over at the screen. He would just smile out of the corner of his mouth. And then he started giggling. And it was in reaction to some of the things that we were saying and doing. But by the end, Mum could see all of those really nuanced interactions that he was giving that meant that he was part of the lesson. And at the beginning, she had tried very hard to help him to do the painting. And by the end, she'd realised that it wasn't about the painting at all. I did another session with a young person with learning difficulties, and she was talking to me about her worries. And she'd written a list. She'd printed off a picture of herself at the park, and then she'd written a list of her worries underneath. And the first thing she did was tell me the 3 worries she had. The first one was that she was going to miss her friends in school. And the second one was that she was going to miss school dinners. And the third one was that school wouldn't come back at the end of the lockdown. And we could talk through, and we could explore what that meant for her being at home during lockdown, and what timelines that might look like. And I took a piece of paper and I drew on it, and we did a social story between the two of us at different ends of the screen. And I spoke to her mum about taking a screenshot of the screen so that we were both holding up the work that we'd done so that she could refer back to it afterwards. So our communications were really strong, and our connection was really strong, and our relationship was stronger because of it. I think that young person whose behaviour has been difficult at home for Mum, because she is so worried about all of these things, I think these interactions that we're doing are really, really vital. And I think for parents, that support where we're able to look face to face at people, because I'm sure that some of these people don't see people from one day to the next. That face to face contact that the parents need, so that they can see that we're happy and engaged and supporting them through all of the difficulties that they're having at home. This young person said that they would like to continue writing their worries down, and that we will meet once a week to discuss what they might look like and discuss strategies that we might come up with between us for support. So the first worry that she had was that she missed her friend. And so we talked about how we could facilitate those 2 young people getting together. Parents hadn't swapped email addresses before the pandemic. So how could we get it so that those young people could talk to each other? And so we've set up meetings for the class group, of course we have, but now we've set up even smaller meetings. So I'm going to facilitate the first few, and then I think the parents will facilitate after that. And that's really important, because those relationships for those young people who are at home are vitally important. And our young people with SEN, many of the parents don't bring them to school. They don't have that school gate kind of relationship with any other parents. And so for us to facilitate, that's really important. It's been difficult. I tweeted some of the information that I'd given to the parents the other day, and immediately somebody asked me how that worked for GDPR and what that meant for safeguarding. And I think if these young people were not SEN and their parents met at the school gate, these things would be happening naturally. So for us to facilitate those kinds of communications between young people is really, really important. I've gone off the subject of early communication, but I think that that was a really important point, that we need to be able to facilitate young people getting together. When they're in class and physical contact is a thing that's allowed, I'm a great advocate for making sure that young people are sitting so close to each other that they can touch each other if they want to, and that they can push each other away if they want to. I think our young people with profound and multiple learning difficulties often don't get to touch anyone else. Adults will touch them for purposes, but often that's all. They don't get to touch their peers. And so having opportunities to be together with their peers is really important. And that's early communication. Thinking about how we use our intensive interaction strategies, and thinking about what we do in class and online, is about that idea that we want them to develop those fundamentals of communication. And the fundamentals of communication are all about early skills that we will use for the rest of our lives. I don't think that there's a single fundamental of communication that I don't use every single time I communicate. That idea of enjoying being with another person. Even if I don't enjoy being with another person, I'm still using that fundamental of communication. I'm still thinking about whether I enjoy being with someone or not. I attend to that person, whether I like them or don't like them, I still attend to them. And that's really, really important. And that can be done on Zoom, Teams, Google Meets, whatever it is that we're talking about. As sequences of activity that we do, that back and forth, as it said in Communication Matters, that back and forth is really, really important to practice. And we can do that virtually. We can do it live, we can do it virtually, we can do it in videos, because our young people will react to us even if we send them recorded videos. Taking turns and exchanges of behaviour, that's a little bit more difficult, but you can do it. We did it in that potato printing exercise that I was talking about before. We went backwards and forwards. I touched the paint because I had the same resources in front of me as he had, and he touched the paint. In fact, I didn't have a potato, I did it with a biscuit because that's all I had, but that's okay too. Changing our expectations, making sure that we're having fun with all these interactions, and that they're really part of the joy of what we're doing instead of the product at the end. And that's really important for our young people too. Understanding non-verbal communication is a big one for our young people who are at early stages of communication. And non-verbal communication via virtual platforms, that's really hard. But smiling and frowning and all of those facial expressions can really be worked on in this sort of format. The closer you get to the camera, the better light you have. Not important. What's important is that you're showing really animated facial expressions, and those young people can see them. I think I do it a lot of the time, even when I shouldn't probably do it. All of this builds into our relationships that we have with other people. Whether it's virtual or in life, these relationships are really important. And that trust that we have with our young people and the trust that they have with us is really, really important too. Relationships are key to good communication. They always have been, because we are much more likely to interact with people that we like, and much more likely to do things for people that we like, or people who show us that they like us. If we have young people who are, you get it often, don't you? Why does he do it for you but not for me? And sometimes it's about trust and relationship, because those positive relationships are key in any classroom or any home, aren't they? We know that if we're already in a heightened state and our feelings are already of frustration and irk, that our young people will pick up on it and quite often will act in a frustrated or irksome way themselves. Safe and caring classroom environments are built around those positive interactions. And what we know about relationships and those early communications and trust and all of those things that we're building up means that we have this emotional bank account that builds up. It's filled with the feeling of security, and the knowledge and understanding that somebody is listening to you. And I think that's a really big thing in relationships for our young people with learning difficulties, for all young people. Our emotional bank accounts should be full of things that help us to understand and be positive about relationships and how people perceive us. And that can be done in even the simplest of terms. We must remember to teach our young people who are early communication stages to be able to say no to things and to honour it when they do. And I think a big part of the emotional bank account and a big part of what causes some of our emotional breakdown with our young people is the idea that their feelings aren't being honoured, and that when they communicate those feelings, they're still not honoured, and the frustration builds and builds. I think listening to our young people with more profound and multiple learning difficulties can feel harder. But when we've built the relationship and we understand what their communications look like, we're able to tap into their emotional bank account, we're able to support them, and we're able to honour what it is they're saying to us. I love the idea of putting something onto a young person's tray on their wheelchair and them throwing it off every time. If every time they throw it off, we put it on and they laugh, it's part of a game, it's fun, it's part of the relationship. But if every time they throw it off and we put it back, they look at us with a frustrated look, or they cry, or they turn away, maybe it's not so much fun. Maybe they're saying, I really can't cope with this, I don't like it. And it's okay for us to say, okay, we won't do that anymore. As educators and as parents, I'm sure that feeling that we should be supporting them to do things all the time is really, really strong. But equally, stopping and watching and listening and reacting to their reactions, it's harder to do, because sometimes it might feel like you're not doing anything. But I think that we are doing so much when we stop and we watch and we listen and we leave them when they say quite clearly that they want to be left. And when we think about our behaviour within those relationships, it becomes even more obvious that sometimes we can cause the problems. If we're not listening with everything, to all of the things that they're telling us, it can be really hard for them to trust us and to carry on with the communication interactions. Letting them walk away, letting them say no, and validating their feelings is really important. I have seen sometimes that young people get very, very frustrated with adults because they continue to push them to do things, even when they're clearly saying that they can't or won't. It's okay to let things go sometimes, because we need to give our young people an exit strategy. We need to give them an escape route. And we don't want that to be a massive behavioural blowout. We want it to be something that is understandable by lots of people. So lots of us will teach the use of visuals, the use of objects of reference, of transitional objects. We'll be thinking about what it looks like for each of our young people and what it is they're trying to say when they say no, or how they're trying to say it. We have to think about what we bring to each situation. And if we're so convinced that we're right all the time and that they can't possibly say no, we're going to exacerbate a lot of situations that probably didn't need to get to where they've got to. Reducing expectations in the moment, reducing language, sometimes even just being silent and sitting looking away in a room can be enough to diffuse a situation that's caused by that feeling of overwhelm. When we've got really strong relationships with our young people and our parents, we can work together to support that these things, in the main, don't happen. We can get in early and we can spot the signs earlier, so that we don't have these emotional meltdowns or shutdowns that sometimes happen. It's not about reducing expectation, as I said before. It's about changing our expectations and really understanding that this is difficult for everybody, including our young people. Sometimes being at the other end of a video call can be really, really, how can I say it? Well, I'm finding this really difficult because I'm not talking to anybody, but I am talking to you guys. So being at the other end of a screen can sometimes feel very lonely. Even when you can see people's faces, it can feel very lonely, because we often crave human contact and touch and those kinds of things. And this isn't the same. And we have to accept and we have to share with our young people that it's okay to feel weird about this kind of stuff. I had a Zoom the other day with a young man who coped for about 4 minutes, and his mum kept trying to bring him back to sit in front of the screen. And I said, it's okay, just move the chair from where it is, because it was in front of the camera. I said, and then I can still see him where he is, and I can still talk to him where he is. And that's okay for me. I don't mind doing my interactions that way if that's how he likes to do it. It doesn't have to be face to face with the screen. And she felt that his behaviour was disrespectful to me as the teacher. And I said, honestly, you know, I would much rather be able to just chat with him and see him where he is. And he was laying on the settee upside down, which was much fun. And I tried to do it, but my work chair wouldn't allow it. But it's as valuable to do it that way. And we have to let it go, as educators sometimes, that everything has to be just so. And parents sometimes have to be supported to understand that it's not a problem if things look different because the children are at home. In fact, I think if he'd have been at school, he would have been upside down on a chair and it wouldn't have been a problem, because it's really, really important that he feels comfortable in his learning. I think that everything is going to be very strange for another year, maybe. Who knows? I think that we need to develop or continue to develop our strategies around communication, relationships and behaviour in a virtual world. I think that we need to consider how we support our parents to support our young people, because we can't do it without them. And those relationships are hugely important. I think that facilitating relationships between peers is hugely important, and setting up so that parents can have those kind of support groups and support mechanisms is vitally important. We have our Empower Me group that meet on the last Friday of every month, and before lockdowns, before coronavirus, we would meet in the school and we would have tea and biscuits. And what I've done is, with the doorstep deliveries of the resources that are going out for home learning, I've also delivered some biscuits, because I think it's important that we keep up that kind of special relationship. And our Empower Me meetings now happen via Microsoft Teams, and we have parents who come, and it's a listening platform. If more parents come, we might split into different groups, but at the moment it's a listening platform, and everybody's got a story to tell. And I think it's vital that we listen to them, because those relationships where parents feel supported and listened to it's just vital. Our young people will feel more supported because of that, in many, many ways. And I think if we look at their early communications, and what it is they're trying to tell us. Often it's that they want to be secure in relationships and have the trust of the adults who work with them. I hope that's made sense, and I hope it's given you some pause for thought. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to get in touch. Thank you.
Hey, it's Ian here at Studio TV. Thank you so much for joining us here at Getting It Right for Me Live. Let me ask you a really quick question. Are you here because you are hoping to develop your skills and your knowledge and all your learning and understanding around supporting and caring for children and young people with special educational needs and disabilities? I assume that's what you've come here for. We hope that you're enjoying your time here with us. There's some amazing people, and we're so grateful for them coming and being part of this. And we're so grateful for you to be joining us as well. There's a couple of things I just really quickly wanted to introduce you to. First of all, don't forget that you can upgrade your ticket at any time to one of the paid tickets, which we try to keep the price as low as we possibly can, just to cover what we need to help out the speakers a little bit, and make sure this event is as good as it can be. What that means is you can access the live Q&A sessions that we're running throughout the event, and you can access all the sessions for up to a year afterwards if you buy one of those paid tickets. Check out the whole school ones. How that works is if you book a whole school ticket, and you can pay online, or you can drop us a line and we'll issue an invoice and we'll sort it all out. That's absolutely fine. But we'll then make it possible for all your staff to be able to access all the sessions here at Getting It Right for Me Live this year. So do hope that's helpful. The other thing I want to mention is, and there are lots of members joining us this week, so thank you so much to those of you who are members, but we have put together, if you're looking to go deeper and access ongoing support and help and training, either as an individual, as a parent, as a professional supporting someone with additional needs, in a school or educational setting, or from a professional point of view, we have put together here at Studio TV with Lynn McCann and her team at Reach Out ASC a fantastic membership that starts at just £10 a month and includes a wide range of courses to help you support those in your care. There's a load of resources and tools, printable things that you can use to work with those children and support them. And there's more content being added all the time. One of my favorite parts of the membership is there is a peer group community that's built into that. So you can ask questions of Lynn and her team and your peers, built right into that membership as well. As I say, it starts at just £10 a month. Whole school memberships are there. We're offering trust-wide memberships, and local authorities have started to get in touch and offer this to their staff across a range of schools as well. We would love for you to join our community. If you've got any questions on that, drop us a line, but very much hope to see you there. And thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of the event.